He still owes me $4 and I have never once brought it up, because if I bring up the money I have to explain why I never cashed it in, and that story takes longer than $4 is worth. Okay, let me back up. My name's Corey, I was 16, and the week this all started I was mostly annoyed about a parking spot situation that had nothing to do with anyone falling in love with anyone. My friend Denny drove us to school and always parked in this one spot behind the gym because the shade tree covered it in the afternoon, and that Monday there was a different car in it, not fancy, just some silver sedan with a dent in the back bumper, and Denny went off about it the whole way to first period like it was a personal betrayal. Turns out the car belonged to a kid named Theo, and Theo was new, and Theo did not know about the unwritten shade tree rule, and Theo was sitting in my third period English class when I walked in still half annoyed about a parking spot I didn't even use. He was in the back corner, not trying to hide, just new kid instinct, I guess. You sit where nobody has to notice you're new. He had his schedule folded into a little square in his hand like he was checking it every few minutes just to have something to do with his hands. I didn't think anything. I want to be clear about that because I know how these stories usually go, some instant lightning bolt thing, and that's not what happened. What happened is Mrs. Ockhaffer made him stand up and introduce himself, and he said, "Theo, I transferred from Bakersfield," and sat back down so fast it was like the standing part physically hurt him, and I remember thinking, rough. That's it, that's the whole first impression, rough, poor guy. We didn't talk for like 2.5 weeks. What actually happened is dumber than that. There's a group project in that class, 4-person groups, and my group's 4th person dropped the class, so Mrs. Ockhaffer just walked Theo over and said, "You're with them now," like she was reassigning furniture. He sat down across from me holding his backpack in his lap like it was a shield. "Sorry," he said, before anyone even said anything to him. "For what?" "I don't know, being the extra guy." I laughed, actually laughed, and something in his face changed, like he hadn't expected that reaction, like he'd been braced for something else. I didn't clock it at the time, I clock it now. The project was on the Crucible, which if you've never read is basically about a town falling apart because everyone's lying to everyone, and there is a joke somewhere in the fact that this is the book that got us talking, but I'm not going to make it because it's too easy. We ended up working together outside of school because 2 of the other group members were generously useless. First it was the library after school. Then it was his kitchen table because the library closed at 5. His mom worked nights at a hospital an hour away, which is part of why they'd moved, and his dad wasn't really in the picture in a way he explained in one sentence, and then visibly wanted to never discuss again, so most days it was just him in that house until close to 8. I noticed things without meaning to notice them. He made 2 cups of tea every time even though he was the only one who drank tea because he said it felt weird making one. He hummed when he was nervous, this tiny under-his-breath thing he clearly didn't know he did. He apologized constantly for things that needed no apology, like existing too close to someone. And he was funny. Nobody tells you the new kid is going to be funny. You picture quiet and sad, and he was quiet, sure, but underneath it he had this dry, deadpan thing where he'd say something absolutely unhinged with a completely straight face, and you wouldn't clock it as a joke until 10 seconds later. I started looking forward to English class, not in a big dramatic way, in a small, stupid way like, oh, third period next, okay, good. I didn't let myself think past that for a long time. There's a version of this story where I tell you I knew right away and I was just scared to say it, and that's true sort of, but it's also not quite honest. The truer version is that I didn't let myself finish the thought. Every time it got close to the front of my brain I'd shove it back like closing a drawer that wouldn't fully shut. I had a whole life built around not having to have this conversation with myself. Denny and I had been friends since 3rd grade. My dad made comments sometimes, not cruel ones, just the kind that let you know what the temperature of the house was. It was easier to keep the drawer shut. So I didn't say anything, I just kept showing up at his kitchen table. Somewhere in there the project ended and I kept coming over anyway, and neither of us mentioned that the reason for coming over didn't exist anymore. The first time something shifted, really shifted, was dumb. It was raining, one of those sideways rains, and I'd walked because Denny had a thing, and by the time I got to Theo's I was soaked through and my shoes were making this awful sound with every step. He didn't say anything about it, just went and got me a towel and a pair of his sweatpants, and while I was changing in his bathroom I heard him through the door going, "These are gonna be too short on you, I'm sorry in advance," and I said something like, "Everyone's short compared to me," and he said, "Wow, okay, giant," and it was nothing, it was genuinely nothing, two people making fun of pant length. But I came out of that bathroom and he was sitting on the floor with his back against his bed looking at his phone, and he glanced up at me in his too short sweatpants and just laughed. A real one, head back. And I thought, not in words exactly, more like a physical feeling in my chest. Oh no. Oh no. I didn't do anything about the oh no for a while. I want to be honest about that because I think people leave that part out, the part where you know something and just sit on it, scared of your own information. What finally moved things wasn't some big romantic gesture. It was Denny actually being Denny. We were at lunch, the three of us now, because Theo had folded into our group somewhere along the way without anyone officially deciding it. And Denny made this comment, not mean, Denny's not mean, about how I'd been MIA lately, always at Theo's, and he said it in this teasing voice, should I be jealous, are you replacing me? And I laughed it off, but Theo went quiet for the rest of lunch. Actually quiet, not his normal quiet. I asked him about it walking to the next period and he shrugged and said, nothing, which from him meant something, and I let it go because I was a coward and it ate at me the whole day. I texted him that night, just hey you good, and he left me on read for 4 hours, which for Theo, who usually texted back in about 90 seconds, was basically a 5-alarm fire. He finally texted back, sorry bad night, don't worry about it. I didn't sleep well. The next day at his kitchen table, no group project excuse left at all, I just asked, what happened yesterday? He was doing this thing with a pen, clicking it, not looking at me. It's stupid. Okay, but tell me the stupid thing. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that I almost said never mind. Then he said, in Bakersfield there was a guy, friend, and people started saying things about us and it got bad. Like bad enough my mom pulled me out mid-semester bad. That's the actual reason we moved, not just her job, that's just the version we tell people. I didn't say anything because I didn't know yet if I was supposed to. And Denny said that thing as a joke, he said. And it wasn't a big deal, I know it wasn't a big deal, but my brain went straight back there anyway, like, is this happening again? Are people gonna start saying it here too? And I hate that my brain does that, I hate it so much. His voice cracked a little on the last word, and he stopped and put his hand over his eyes like he was mad at himself for it. I want to tell you I said something perfect. I didn't. What I said was it true about you and him? Not smooth, not gentle, just the question that had apparently been living in me for weeks coming out sideways. He took his hand off his eyes and looked at me, and there was this long, awful electric pause where I thought I'd ruined everything, asked the wrong thing at the wrong time, and then he said quietly, yeah. And then quieter, like it cost him something, why? Not why does it matter? Just why, like he already knew why I was asking and needed me to be the one to say it first because he'd already gone first once and it had cost him a whole life in another town. I remember my hands were sweating. I remember thinking, this is the moment, if I close the drawer now it stays closed forever, and something in me just refused to let that happen. Because I think I've been doing the same thing you're describing, I said. Except nobody said anything about me, I just decided by myself that it wasn't allowed to be true. He didn't move for a second, then he asked, is it true? And I said, I don't know yet, I think so. Which is a stupid answer, but it was the honest one, and he seemed to understand that better than a confident answer would have landed. We didn't kiss that day. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, this is supposed to be the big moment, but that's not how it went. What happened is we just kept talking, for hours, about Bakersfield and the guy whose name he still wouldn't fully say, about my dad's comments and what they'd taught me to swallow, about how tired we both were of managing everyone else's comfort with information we hadn't even confirmed to ourselves yet. It took another 3 weeks after that for anything to actually happen. Those 3 weeks were the worst and best 3 weeks of that whole year, because now there was no more pretending the thing between us wasn't a thing, but there was also no name on it yet, and every single interaction felt loaded. Passing a pencil felt loaded. Sitting slightly closer on his bed than we used to felt loaded. We were like two people circling the edge of a pool, both freezing, both waiting for the other to jump in first so it wouldn't be their fault if the water was too cold. Denny figured it out before either of us said anything, obviously, because Denny's known me since we were 8 and apparently that buys you some kind of radar. He didn't make a big thing of it. He just pulled me aside after gym one day and said, you know I don't care, right? Whatever's going on with you and Theo, just whenever you're ready to tell me something, I already know it's not gonna change anything. I didn't cry in the locker room hallway, but it was close. The actual moment, the one I replay, it wasn't dramatic. There was no rain this time, no rescue, nothing cinematic. We were on his roof, which you could get to from his bedroom window, and we used to sit out there sometimes because his neighborhood was quiet enough to see actual stars. We were talking about nothing, some show we both half-watched, and there was a gap in the conversation. One of those gaps that used to make me anxious and by then had started to feel comfortable, and he just said out of absolutely nowhere. I keep almost saying something and then not saying it. Say it, I said, and my voice came out rougher than I meant it to. He looked at me for a second too long. If I say it and it's wrong, I don't think I can transfer schools again. My mom can't afford it and I don't think I can afford it emotionally, I mean. It's not gonna be wrong. You don't know that. I do, actually, I said, because I've been rehearsing the same sentence for like 3 weeks and I keep chickening out too, so if you say yours first I'll just say mine right after and then it doesn't matter whose fault it is. He almost laughed, this shaky, nervous almost laugh. That's not how bravery works. I never said it was brave, I said it was a plan. He looked back out at the yard for a second and I watched him breathe, actually watched his shoulders go up and down once twice like he was gathering something physical, and then he said it. Quiet, fast, like ripping something off. I like you, not friend-like, the other kind. I have for a while and it's been kind of unbearable, honestly, sitting next to you at lunch pretending my whole chest isn't doing something. And then, because apparently I really was a man of my word even in moments of enormous vulnerability, I said mine right back immediately like we'd rehearsed a duet. Same, all of that, same. We didn't kiss right then either, if you can believe it. We just sat there, both of us kind of stunned that the sentence had actually made it out into the air and hadn't destroyed anything, both of us laughing a little from the sheer relief of it, the specific relief of a fear turning out to be smaller than you built it up to be. The kiss happened maybe 10 minutes later after the laughing settled, when he turned to say something else and just stopped talking instead, and I stopped whatever I was about to say too, and there was this pause where we both understood exactly what was about to happen and let it happen anyway. It wasn't smooth. I bumped his nose a little. He apologized in the middle of it, which is the most Theo thing that has ever happened, apologizing mid-kiss, and I started laughing against his mouth and he started laughing too, and we had to stop and just sit there cracking up at ourselves under a sky that did not care even a little bit about either of us in the best possible way. I'm not going to pretend everything was easy after that, because that would be the fake version of this story, and I told you I wasn't doing that. Telling my dad took me another 4 months. It did not go the way I'd hoped, not violent. Nothing like that, just cold, quiet. A lot of we'll discuss this later that turned into weeks of barely being discussed at all. Him leaving rooms a beat too early. Conversations at dinner getting shorter. It got better eventually, slowly, in the unglamorous way things actually get better. Not through one big speech but through time and my mom running interference and Theo somehow being patient with a version of my house that wasn't always kind to him. Denny took us to In-N-Out the week after we told him properly and paid for all 3 of us and said, completely deadpan, I already knew, I'm just doing this because Theo looks like he needs a milkshake. And Theo laughed so hard he choked a little. And that's honestly one of my favorite memories from that whole year, weirdly, more than some of the bigger ones. The $4 thing, okay, fine, I'll close the loop. Early on, before any of this, before the roof, Theo borrowed $4 from me for the vending machine because his card wasn't working and he said, I'll pay you back tomorrow. And he never did, and I never asked, because somewhere along the way it stopped being about the money and started being this dumb little private joke between us. I still bring it up sometimes years later like, you still owe me. And he still says put it on my tab, and it's stupid, it means nothing. Except it means everything actually, because it's this tiny thread that goes all the way back to the very beginning, back before either of us knew what we were about to become to each other. He's not the guy from Bakersfield's shadow anymore. He hasn't been for a long time. But I think about that scared kid at the back of Mrs. Aucaffer's class sometimes, folding his schedule into a smaller and smaller square, bracing for a new town to go the same way the last one did. It didn't though. That's the part I keep coming back to if I'm honest. Not the roof, not the kiss, not even the $4, just, it didn't go the same way. Somebody's whole life can be quietly rerouted by one group project nobody wanted to be assigned to, one parking spot under a shade tree that some kid from Bakersfield didn't know the rules of yet. I still don't know what I would have done if he'd stayed quiet on that roof, if neither of us had said it. I think about that sometimes, late at night, this whole other life running parallel to the one I actually got, where we just keep almost saying it forever and never do.